Welcome back to another amazing Crusty car news. We have 5 amazing, outstanding news stories for you this week. The first story is proof. Jeep, Ram, Dodge, and Chrysler are on their last legs. That's right, there's massive layoffs, sales are down, and things are looking ugly. The second story, I'm giving you a list of the worst depreciating cars you can ever imagine for 2025. You're going to want to check it out so you don't get snookered. The third story, car dealers are warning buyers. What's going on? Some strange new phenomenon. Now that sales are down, they're finding new creative ways to pull even more money out of your pocket. The fourth story, after all my time in the industry selling cars, buying cars, flipping, fixing, I've realized that there's some major tips you're going to want to follow. If you're looking at buying a new car and you don't want to get hosed, I'm going to share those tips. And the fifth story, with all these extremely high car prices for the last 4 years, guess what? These car dealerships are finally getting what they deserve. So go ahead, relax, sit back, stay warm, grab your favorite beverage, and hold on for the ride. Let's get into it now.
Life's too short to drive boring cars.
The first story, yes, there's finally proof that Jeep, Ram, Dodge, and Chrysler, in other words, Stellantis, are on their last legs. Their sales have been down, and while other manufacturers are selling vehicles at an alarming rate, for some reason, Stellantis just can't quite move enough metal to make profits. That's right, massive layoffs across the board. Toledo, Detroit, yes, that's the next series of manufacturing facilities that are on the chopping block. There was a misalignment with Dodge, Ram, Chrysler, and Jeep products, of course, with an American buyer. They weren't selling. Day supply was record highs, and now finally, they've managed to get day supply down to a manageable number. Ram trucks now are about 120 days supply. Dodges are a little over 120 days supply as well. And even Jeeps, we're seeing numbers close between 120 and 130 days supply here in the early part of 2025. But there could be doors about to close for Stellantis on Jeep, Ram, Dodge, and even Chrysler, their single product, which is nothing more than a minivan, because now there's more layoffs looming. There's talk about offering up incentives to leave, retirement packages, and Stellantis is just still trying to recoup from all the damage that was done merely months and even the last few years under the helm of Carlos Tavares. Stellantis decided to continually jack up their prices over the last 4 years, believing and telling customers that it was an upscale luxury brand. But during the cost of living crisis, vehicles like this just didn't resonate, and less people were reasonably wanting to even spend that kind of money on a Jeep product. They're not a luxury vehicle. They're a vehicle made to go off-roading, and quite honestly, a vehicle for the masses. But we finally hit a point where the masses can no longer afford these vehicles, and hence, we had a stalemate, stagflation. The vehicles would not sell. And during the cost of living crisis, people are more worried about eating, sleeping, and just going from A to B with work. They don't need a flashy vehicle like this that costs $85,000. I mean, Durangos used to be an affordable vehicle, but let's take a look. We have this cute little Durango. Here's a 25. Okay, at least it's a brand new one. We have a Durango GT plus all-wheel drive. Has a few options, actually quite nicely spec'd here. But again, I used to have one of these years ago. I had the V8 engine, and I even had the third row. It was a great vehicle, but they've gotten way out of touch with the common buyer, the buyer that would normally buy these, because this one here is $70,375. Out the door, you're 76, 77, maybe close to $80,000 with taxes and with some of the extras. You put on some mud guards, you put on some paint protection film, and you put on some all-weather mats inside. Plus your taxes and all your registration fees, you might be close to $80,000 for this vehicle. And Rams haven't been cheap either. I mean, here's a beautiful little Laramie. We have a 4x4, of course, beautiful truck. Nice finishing on here. I like the detailing that they've done on there. You've got a rear slider. Of course, you get the big alloys. And most of you who have been talking to me say, you don't need all those extras. You don't need all the fancy doodads if you just need to get to work. This one's a 3/4 ton heavy duty, so it's not even the 1 ton, 3,500. This was one of the hardest selling vehicles. Did you realize the latest statistics are inventory is actually slouched? There was a sales decline in the first part of 2025 of brand new vehicles overall in the industry by about 1.2%. There was a little bit of a slack. And while a lot of people love these upper trim level vehicles, the point is during that 2000 to 2022, 2023 years, you couldn't really find too many lower trim vehicles, and all you had to do was pick from the higher trim stuff like these.
And that ultimately drove prices up. Take a look at this price. Oh boy, $111,000. $111,000 for this night crew. That's a whole lot of money, to be honest with you. It's no wonder they're not selling. They couldn't move a lot of metal. They couldn't move, the Rams weren't selling, the Jeeps weren't selling, and neither were the Chryslers or the Dodges. I mean, Dodge, they got rid of their hot rod, the Challenger Chargers, they're going to EVs. The Dodge Hornet and the Durango is such an obsolete product that just, it never sold that well, at least not at that price point. More issues were the Jeeps. You know, if you bought a Jeep 5 or 7 years ago, you realized it was worth X amount of dollars. And now, you know, 4 or 5 years later, all of a sudden that same Jeep was about 40% more. And what happened? That's what happened. It was sticker shock, and a lot of customers gave up on the brand. To make matters worse, quality control was an issue, and that made its rounds. A lot of people were getting shy to buying a lot of the Stellantis products because their affiliation with going EV, the quality, the reliability challenges, as well as they were one of the leaders in recalls, which meant that they had a lot of vehicles that were very troubled, and you had to worry about buying a vehicle and having to tie up its time at the dealer service shop getting a lot of recalls taken care of. But right here we have a Ram 1500, and this is a classic. As you'll notice, that was their entry-level point for their pickup trucks, for their 1500, their half-ton trucks. This here, unfortunately, was eliminated, and last fall they decided to get rid of that and scrap that model altogether. Why? Because it didn't have the margins in it that Stellantis was looking for. Well, that was a mistake, because now a lot of customers are looking for those types of vehicles, and unfortunately they can't find them. Now it's a higher trim level vehicles are really all that you can find. And according to Cox Automotive data, we're now up to an average transaction price of about $43,600, and there's about 96 days supply of inventory. That means if all manufacturers shut down production today, they'd still have a good 3 to 4 months left of inventory. And we're seeing some of the highest numbers of inventory across the industry right now, 2.92 million units available, a clear indication that we've returned and we've almost overshot to where we were in 2019. Inventory is abound, and yet sales are very soft. And the only reason Ram, Dodge, Jeep were able to move some metal was because of the strong incentives at the end of 2025, and that was keeping the company afloat. They were pushing product out the door. And while we're even hearing Canisius, and they're talking allegedly that there's rumors they may in fact bring back the V8 because they scrapped the V8 engine. Under the Tavares control, they let go of the V8 engine for the Ram trucks. They may in fact bring that back, because now the only engine you can get with Ram is that Hurricane twin turbo inline 6 or the naturally aspirated 3.6 V6. You cannot get a V8 engine anymore currently in this full-size truck, and the struggles were real. Now Ford adopters have taken on the Ford EcoBoost engines, the 2.7s, the 3s, the 3.5 liters, but it took a while. So Canisius was brought back out of retirement because Tavares had to go bye-bye, which he went last year. Now, what does that mean? They're now into damage control mode. They're having to realize that they need to do some serious moves and shakes just to get the business, just to keep the business moving and generating revenue. They're a big organization. They have a lot of product lines, but a lot of it's stale. A lot of people are getting bored with it. The prices are high, and some major changes have to happen. And Jeeps have had a tough go. Their Wagoneer, they've had to incentivize drastically. They haven't been selling at all. They've even came out with the Wagoneer S, and they're not selling any of those. They're sitting on the lots just collecting dust. But even the Wranglers like this, otherwise a very popular model, many of them you're finding at $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. We're even seeing the 4xe going as much as $85,000 Canadian, meaning a lot of people just simply will not pay it, even if they can afford it during the cost of living crisis. Nobody's interested in spending that kind of money on a Jeep product. It's just not worth it. And just because they change CEOs doesn't mean all is well. See, unfortunately, they're openly admitting at Stellantis land that there's some major damage control. They have to do some major actions to try to turn the ship around. And so the latest is in Detroit and Toledo, there's about 20 some facilities that are all subject to some massive layoffs. That's right, a lot of workers are getting their walking papers. While some of this is voluntary, the point is Stellantis is taking harsh measures. We saw lots of layoffs going on last year, with layoffs from, of course, the manufacturing facility that was creating some of the classics. When they closed down the Ram Classics, they also essentially let go a lot of workers. That was intended to create a lower cost truck, which never happened, and the EV market never happened either. So essentially there were some workers laid off there. There's also many workers laid off as a result of general downsizing. There was many stop halt productions because too much inventory. They were trying to play catch up. And so while they're having too much inventory hitting the lot, the day supply was rising at an alarming rate. So the decision was hold off on some of the popular models, the Jeep Grand Cherokees, the Wranglers. Those are all two of the most popular models that were actually shut down on the assembly line just to play catch up. Too much of this inventory was hitting the dealers' lots, and therefore they had to put some workers on some temporary layoffs. The bottom line is there's been thousands of layoffs from the beginning of this whole fiasco back in 2022, 2023, and now we're facing many more. That could in fact impact the dealer network in a drastic way. The damage is done, but it still continues. And what we're looking at now is staring down the barrel of these tariffs. And we are seeing what's going on, of course, in the industry as a whole, that a lot of these vehicles are going to struggle selling because certain Stellantis models are built in Canada and Mexico, which will put Jeep, Ram, Dodge, and Chrysler all in a world of hurt, simply trying to sell vehicles that are no longer competitively priced because they weren't in the first place. And now throw another 25 or 50% tariffs on the top, it's going to be another world of hurt on top of this. And some more headwinds for Stellantis with some of the vehicles that are built in both Canada and Mexico. You have the Compass, a very popular small SUV. You have the Chrysler Pacifica, or the Caravan minivans, built in Canada. You also have the Charger, built in Canada. So any of those vehicles now that are currently built in Canada or Mexico, they may see some major tariffs. They may see some major price hikes and will clearly no longer be competitive, and therefore people won't buy them. So more of these headwinds for Stellantis. The CEO is trying to clean up and do a little damage control, but in doing so, the senior executives are further looking for opportunities to try to clean house, shed themselves of some workers, UAW workers, frontline, administrative staff. They're just trying to trim down drastically to reduce costs.
Can you personally think of any other reasons this product line is not selling? Please do drop a line. Love to hear it. The second story is all about some of the worst depreciating vehicles on the market today. Are they electric? Are they luxurious? Are they big? Are they tanks, trucks, cars, and SUVs? Well, guess what? I'm going to share some of the worst depreciating cars you're definitely going to want to avoid if you like your money like I do. The Escalade ESV. In 5 years, it loses as much as 62.9%, or as much as almost $57,000, if you can believe that. That's horrendous amount of money in 5 year time frame. What can you do in 50 grand in 5 years? Like, can you imagine? Maybe some vacations, holidays, maybe a trip to Europe, you name it. Well, guess what? The next one, again, not a shocker. And we've seen it. We've seen it with some of the rental companies, Hertz, unloading lots of their inventory. We're seeing, of course, a lot of what's going on recently with brands like Tesla. That's right. A lot of people are trying to unload and dump their Teslas. But it's happened before even this latest stream of catastrophe. Quite honestly, Teslas and EVs have always done poorly in terms of overall resale. The Tesla Model X, which is their big problem child with the big Falcon doors, you know, that big bird type car, SUV, well, it loses as much as 63.4%. And that equates to about $53,846. Devastating. Well, this next one meets on all fronts, and we're talking about Maserati Levante at 64.7% is gone. That's right. Poof! Up in smoke. That's right, at the turn of a hat, turn of a clock, and certainly 5 years later. And that equates to $64,991. A little bit of a shocker, but not really. Nissan Leaf. Remember, the mileage was abysmal with that. The technology was horrifying, and the battery technology just certainly wasn't there. A lot of people were complaining they were just not that great. I know it was an early approach to the EV market, but they lose 64.1% of their value in 5 years. And that equates to about $18,000 and change. How about the next one? Bring My Wallet, or it doesn't matter, I could go on. BMW, that's right, the 5 Series is one of the biggest losers in this list for depreciating. Now, they're wonderful cars. BMWs create some great cars these days. The new inline 6, the Turbo 4s, the B48s, the B58 engines are pretty durable these days, but they still can't shake their reputation. And the rich that buy them on the front end have no problems. They lease them, they buy them, whatever, they can well heeled. It's usually the secondary market that suffers because nobody's looking for them. Young kids don't care about the 5 Series. Young executives, professionals don't want a used 5 Series BMW because they're starting to learn the value of money and they know depreciation and repairs are a big problem. So the 5 Series BMW, 64.7% is lost in 5 years. And that's equivalent to about $47,457. What could you do with $47,000? Another fine Stellantis product, Maserati Ghibli, 64.7% and $70,874. Yeah, not a shocker. How about the gloriously overlarge, overcharged Infiniti QX80? Now we know Infinitis have been sucking the hind puyans when it comes to depreciation, quality, resale, and certainly sales on the front end. But this should be of no surprise. Now, I will admit the QX80 is one of their better products. It actually has a torque converter auto. They don't have the CVT. They have a large V8, at least in the older generations. The new ones, I believe, are a Turbo 6. But nonetheless, they can't shake it. It's a large vehicle with heavy depreciation, affiliated with Nissan, which is not that popular. And they don't treat a lot of their customers, from my own personal experience, all that well in the service department. So here we are, 65% is gone in 5 years. And that works out to about $53,571. Tesla Model S. You'll notice the X, the S, those are their premium models. When you get into the Ys and the 3s, people tend to, they like those a little better because they're lower cost to buy in, so the rate of depreciation is a little bit lower. It's usually the high dollar cars when they're new are the ones that see the big drops. But nonetheless, here's the Model S. That's their premium car, the sedan, 65.2% gone. Lists like that in 5 years, $52,165. Another BMW, I don't know, however they say it, 67.1% gone. Can you imagine 2/3 of the value of that car is gone in 5 years? 2/3. 2/3. Let that sink in. Let that sink in, folks. You spend $120,000 for a 7 Series BMW, it's only worth 40 grand in 5 years. Ouch. And then on top of it, once it's off warranty, now you're dealing with catastrophic failures, huge expenses and repairs and service costs. And there's just, the equity is just up in smoke. There is no equity. We're talking about Jaguar I-Pace. Electric vehicles, 72.2%, and they lose $52,000 in 5 short years. That's a list. Do you have any other big losers in terms of depreciation? I don't like burning my money in a cost of living crisis, and I'm sure most of you don't either. Have you bought in any of these vehicles recently? Well, hold on tight. If in fact you're with a vehicle that depreciates heavily, the best thing to do is just hold on for the long haul. I mean, the worst place you can do is get in a vehicle and sell it every 2 or 3 years. That's where you really feel the depreciation. If you hold on to it for 10 years, you're probably okay. The third story, can you believe it? Now that car dealers sales are slowing down, sales are literally in the tube, and we're seeing the car market crash right in front of our very eyes. These car manufacturers, these dealers are finding new and creative ways to extract more money from your pockets. Of course, we're talking about subscription-based services, the service department. There's many other methods that they're finding new creative ways to get more money from you.
See lots just absolutely filling up. Doesn't matter what brand, make, model, they're all filling up. New inventories pouring in, but there's a shift in the tide with the increasing prices of a lot of these new vehicles. It's becoming ever increasingly more difficult for consumers to afford a new vehicle. Late model used vehicles have become much more popular because it offers an opportunity to get into a vehicle without spending the top dollars of a brand new. Because new cars, trucks, SUVs, when you buy one of these vehicles, the first thing you have to do, you have to think about interest rate charges. You have to think about the cost of borrowing. Of course, the vehicles are extraordinarily expensive, the new technology, that all comes at a cost in these new models. On top of it, a lot of times you have to put the extras, paint protection film. You'll see this one here has the paint protection film. You have extra warranties, tire and rim packages, you have mud guards, you have floor mats, and a lot of these vehicles, to buy them new, costs a high amount of money. But if there's one thing we learned in the last 4 years, is customers are starting to slowly run out of money. Yes, we're seeing the average transaction price slowly creep up for the last few years. This last few months has shown that it's actually ticked downwards again. And while vehicles aren't getting any cheaper, the average transaction price is now down to about $48,600. And big full-size pickup trucks from Ford, Ram, General Motors have been a big part of these big price increases. Same have a lot of the luxury vehicles like BMW, Audi, Mercedes. But a lot of the luxury brands have been struggling. And while BMW's had some success in Europe, they're certainly selling more vehicles in Europe in the EV sector. The bottom line is, in North America, there is a slump. the sales for luxury vehicles is slightly sliding, and the buyers have a bigger appetite for buying slightly lower cost vehicles, smaller SUVs, smaller cars, and even more entry-level trucks. Means that we're seeing this average transaction price go down. Why is that? Simply stated, the economy is getting weaker. With the cost of living crisis, people are now looking to buy more affordable vehicles. Just ask Volkswagen how their price increases as well as the transition into electrification have hurt sales for Volkswagen in North America and Europe. And while products like Lexus and Toyota have always succeeded in the last few years, largely because of people trust the brand, even the quality and durability of some of those vehicles are questionable these days. So when buying trucks, people generally gravitated to full-size trucks. You know, the 1500 Sierras, of course the Ram 1500s, Ford 150s, F-150s, when they're talking about F-Series trucks. Now people are looking at smaller trucks, older trucks, like Rangers, and some of these smaller vehicles, like the small Mavericks now, which have been ever increasing popularity because they're more affordable. I mean, just look at the average age of most of these vehicles parked along this lineup. We're talking about used vehicles. People are spending more time in their older used vehicles fixing them up than they are in brand new vehicles, and that's very telling, because about 6 or 7 years ago, the average age of vehicles on the road were about 7 or 8 years of age. Guess what? That's changed. Now the average age of vehicles on the road you'll find are closer to 13 and 14 years of age. And these OEMs as well as the dealerships are always looking for new creative ways to get people to spend their money. Of course, the new car sales aren't selling as well, so they're coming up with their other creative ways. We know BMW has been some of the first pioneers on bringing subscription-based services to their vehicles. You wanted to get in a new vehicle and you had heated seats, you had to pay a monthly subscription. They were talking about even some of your infotainment, some of your navigation features were all based behind a paywall. So a lot of these manufacturers are looking at new ways to try to generate revenue. Clearly sales are down and they're seeing the average transaction prices drop, and the demand for a lot of these new vehicles means that less people are inclined to go new and they'd rather go with some of these older used vehicles instead. So while dealerships are in the business of selling cars, SUVs and trucks, the bottom line is when things get tight and people aren't buying these expensive vehicles, things have to change and they're generating revenue in new ways. And this is a strong indication of what's going on overall in the economy and the financial state that a lot of people are in both the US, Canada. I mean, why not? Why stop there? Even in Europe. Even in China, they've recently pushed back a lot of the European luxury brands. Mercedes, Audi, sales are in the toilet because they're now electing to buy more BYD, more affordable electric vehicles, and sales in some of these European cars in China have absolutely fallen off a cliff. People are looking for more affordable options, and looking for cheap is always a good solution. But BMW is not the only one hitting us with these subscription-based services. Now we're hearing brands even like Jeep, where customers now are buying their new vehicles and having ads roll up on some of their infotainment screens. That's absolutely ballistic. And even the CEO at General Motors is stating that that's a growing trend, that they want to transition more into a technologically advanced industry. They want to become more microprocessor based, a little bit less about mechanics and a little bit more about subscription based, generating revenue opportunity. I mean, it's no secret, these vehicles are becoming much more automated. I mean, gone are the times of great exhaust sounds, great driving experiences, and now autonomy are rolling in, subscription-based services. Sit back, relax. We're hearing a lot of people as they let the vehicle do most of the driving. Self-parking, self-driving, automated adaptive cruise control are key common features that a lot of people are getting used to. The less hands-on and the more the vehicle drives itself, and that seems to be the growing trend, electronics and computer driving these vehicles. These dealerships, if they're not selling vehicles, they have to get creative in other ways, and a lot of it's in the service bay. Yes, that's right, the service department. They're looking for other ways to generate revenue. Now, we've had an experience recently where we took our new Toyota Camry into the service bay, into the service shop, and found out that they did a quick pencil whipping and they actually didn't do the work as they said they would. We paid the bill and it was a clear ripoff. So they're looking at ways not just to rip off customers, but there's a lot of ways to do it legitimately, ultimately upping up hourly rates, ultimately upselling service packages, upselling warranty, but upselling a lot of the repairs that you may or may not actually need. There's a strong focus on a lot of these OEMs to now start selling a lot of extra servicing. they have to make up their money somewhere, and if they're not selling cars, they're looking at selling their service. Have you not noticed how complex vehicles are getting these days? It's almost at a point where you can't do anything yourself. The limits to what a home do-it-yourself mechanic can do or a small independent shop are becoming less and less. And a lot of these vehicles now require a skilled touch, factory training, technical equipment, and troubleshooting and diagnostics equipment. And that just means that they're forcing the hand of a lot of the buyers. You own a vehicle outside of warranty, you have to pay the piper to get your vehicle serviced, maintained, and repaired. That's not by accident. And while prices of new continue to climb, the availability of good late model used vehicles starts to shrink. And it's that shrinking market in the used car sector of late model vehicles or great certified pre-owned vehicles like this short consuming batch right here just seems to be going away. There seems to be a stronger demand for customers to hold on to their vehicles, hold on to their cars longer than they've ever held on to them before. Because a lot of these new vehicles are simply too expensive. When you're dealing with trucks that are up in that $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 and Jeeps that are at $85,000 plus, it begs the question, how long can this go on?
So buyer beware, watch out for those scams, and maybe you can also keep more of that money in your pocket. The fourth story, how to buy a new vehicle. Well, we all know how to buy a vehicle. We know how to go down to the bank, get some money, and get pre-approved, and then just sign on the dotted line. But there's actually a lot more. If you don't like to give all your money away, if you like to get the best deals, if you like to get the vehicle that you've had on your eye on for a long time and not be sold into something you didn't really want, I'm going to share those tips with you.
It makes me so mad when I hear other people are overpaying for their new vehicles. Well, guess what? I'm going to break this down. Some of my favorite approach with this car crash that's looming. We're about to see a lot of prices dropping. Why? Well, first there's going to be a spike upwards, and largely because of these tariffs and of course extra inventory. Cost of living crisis is creeping in. But I want to break this down. I want to give you right quick as to some of the tips you've got to be aware of if you want to get a good deal, not get hosed. So what I like to do is go to Car Gurus. So I pull up, it's one of my favorite search engines. I check in there and you can filter. For example, let's say I want to buy a Ford F-150. Let's say I live in Beverly Hills. So you go to Car Gurus, you type all this in, Ford F-150, pick your make and model. 90210, I just picked it. Let's just say I live in Beverly Hills. I can only wish. But you always want to be sure, before you even go down to the dealership, make sure that you know what you're buying. Make sure that you know the type of vehicle that you're buying. Make sure you sort of have the trim levels already figured out. Because if you're going down there and sort of loosely, casually shopping, they're going to pitch you in all kinds of different products, and some of which you maybe don't want, and many of which you're probably going to overpay for. You won't be prepared. So I go to Car Gurus and I check it daily, weekly for sure, at a bare minimum, right here, days on the market. So you go down to days on the market, open that up. Car dealers like to sell their cars between 60 and 90 days after they come off the truck. See, anytime before that, they're not desperate. They've got inventory, it's sitting there, it's fresh, they know they can sell it. But as the vehicle sits, the lot rot kicks in. You get things like, you know, we saw it a couple years ago, vehicles that sit for too long. You know, we saw 22s and 23s still on the lot in some cases. And what often happens there, you get flat spotting in tires, cracking on tires. A 3-year-old truck that's brand new old stock, you got a battery that's already, you know, got a couple years off of its lifetime, which is only good for maybe 5 years to begin with. Paint fade, birds crapping on it. You can even get mice nests building into these vehicles. But again, ultimately the fluids haven't been changed. There's a lot of reasons why you probably wouldn't necessarily buy a brand new 2 or 3-year-old vehicle, because it's just been sitting there and largely neglected. They haven't probably been starting it, and it's just drying up. It's rotting, so to speak. So ideally, the dealers don't want to hold on to these, because there's other issues in holding on to a vehicle for too long. You know, they have these floor plan costs, which essentially is like the cost of borrowing. Like you, if you bought a car and you have to make payments on it, every month you're paying interest charges. Well, they're doing the same thing. They have these cars, they're trying to sell them. I mean, they have sort of the 60 to 90 day window. Outside of that, then it becomes too expensive. They're starting to spend money. They're starting to burn money, if you will. So they want to sell them between 60 and 90 days. So what I'd suggest is you search out the types of vehicles. In this case, I said Ford F-150. You go in there, the days on the market. So what you do is you scroll this up, drag this hand on the days on the market, and you go all the way up to, let's just say, let's go up to, oh, I don't know, let's pick 80 days because that's on the top limits. Remember, you go 80 days and all of a sudden they're getting really itchy to sell that car. So what I'll do is I'll pick that, I'll do a search on that and it'll refresh. Now, again, we're in Beverly Hills, so pardon that, but I mean, you have to look in your own jurisdiction. You can also filter how far, like location and delivery. You know, maybe I don't want to go across the country. See, in this case, we've got 50 miles selected. What if I'm willing to travel across maybe Northern California, maybe San Diego or Southern California, San Diego or San Francisco or something? Maybe I'm willing to travel 500 miles. You know, we can always update that as well. And I'm willing to travel for a good deal. Sure, why not? So what you do is then you pick that, you pick your distance and you figure that out. And then you look, okay, well, here's some great vehicles. And maybe you're looking for something like, oh, I don't know, let's take a look here. Let's go with a King Ranch. We're looking for a King Ranch. Can we pick any of that? King Ranch. And then we'll do a select. So you filter it out, you want the trim, you know you want a King Ranch, you like the way it's outfitted. So here's your only vehicles available. You can scroll through within 500 miles, in this case, F-150 King Ranch. Of course, unfortunately, they don't really have too many of these. Looks like we only have 2 to choose from. The question is, are you getting any deals? And you've got to watch these cars now and these trucks because now we've already selected how many days on the lot. This one here looks like it's been discounted a couple of thousand. This one here looks like it's still the same price. But let's go into this one and see what the particulars are. Now, they've already knocked $2,000 off of sticker, which they listed as $80,000. Now, the most important thing to do is go on down here, understand the particulars. Does it have all the features? Clean title, you want to make sure that it's a new truck. In this case, probably should be fine, 0 accidents. But then you can also figure out selling slowly. So it'll give you advice. What we have here on Car Gurus, it tells you selling slowly, it's below market average for sales. Price has already been decreased by $2,000. In this case, remember I put over 90 days. In this case, we have 121 days on the lot. So now this truck here has already been 4 months on the lot. So they're not super desperate, but remember, they want a deal because every month now that goes beyond, you know, that 60-day window, it's going to start costing them floor plan. And they don't necessarily want to tie themselves up with that. Now, of course, the other details, you can figure out how much it's going to cost you per month. You know, you can work all of that out. It gives you the quick calculator here. But the point is, that's a great way to get into, you know, doing your research. You go in there, you look at a couple trucks, they'll guide you over to that truck, and high probability, he's probably going to take you there because a good salesman will know the older inventory and they're trying to get rid of. So he may try to get rid of that. In some cases, he may not, because now what a lot of dealerships are doing, they're not even paying a percent commission a lot of times. It's say $100 flat fee or $500 flat fee just for selling the truck or the car, because now they're just trying to cut their losses. So they'll just say, give you a flat fee, just make this vehicle disappear. That's what the GMs are going to often communicate to their salespeople. So it might be worth their time to just let it go for a couple $100 or not. So you go in there, you finally find the truck. You always play coy, never look excited. Go in there, negotiate. Try to take the price down. Remember, sticker price is somewhere in that 6% above invoice. Okay, so we want to ideally negotiate into that invoice territory, especially if a vehicle's been sitting for a while. These guys, remember, I've shared this on videos. Where do new vehicles go that don't sell? It's very true. There's a number of options that they have, but when they hit the end of the road, that vehicle may get scrapped. So ultimately what you're looking at doing is going in there hard. You're thinking even try a 10% under sticker at least. If they're saying this is $80,000 for this truck under sticker, try to come at them with, $70,000. It's brand new, right? 70, maybe even high 60s. Try to come at them with a number like that. They might laugh. They might think you're foolish for asking. The hell with them. If you like the truck and they're willing to at least negotiate, play ball. If they're going to laugh, they're going to kind of call you out, then you know what? There's lots of other Ford dealers in the neighborhood. Lots. Don't worry about it. Move on. But ultimately, what you want to do is you negotiate on the price of that vehicle. First off, foremost, get that vehicle price flushed out. Say all of a sudden you're able to get that, that $78,000, maybe you're able to get that for now $72,000, and you're happy with that. You feel pretty good. You're somewhere low end, closer to invoice price on that vehicle, and it seems like a good buy. You're comfortable with it. You can make the monthly payments, or you have the cash, whatever. Make sure before you even come to the dealership, you've also searched out your options for banking, lending, and make sure you got the best loan rate available through your independent banks first, so that when that salesperson kicks you over to the loan office or to the office, the finance office here in the dealership, it'll likely be another person, and they're going to try to pitch you on extended warranties. They're going to try to pitch you on paint protection film, undercoating, key fob protection, replacement packages, maintenance packages. They're going to pitch you on all of that. And then at that point is more likely when you want to try to say, you know what, I was thinking of trading my truck in or my car or whatever. At that point, you may introduce that conversation. Because if you say that you have a trade-in before you negotiate, they're going to use that and blend that in and as a tactic, and you'll end up losing money in the transaction. So at that point, you may introduce the conversation of trade-in. If they don't want to play ball and are not interested in your old jalopy, or they don't like the number, they're either going to take it or they're not. And it's up to you whether you think that's a good deal or not, whether your old, 30-year-old truck is worth $3,000 as a trade-in against that brand new truck that you just got at invoice. That's your decision. But ultimately, you don't have to trade it in. It's an option. But don't bring up that choice or that decision until, later on, once you're in the finance office. Then you can kind of rework that in. The other thing is all these extras that they're trying to pitch you on, don't. Take the vehicle out the door price is all you're asking for. Base truck as is today. If we were to sign the paper, out the door price. Taxes, registration, that's it. Done. Don't take the extras. Don't take any of that, because you'll never use it. And if you use part of it, you'll likely overspend on it. If you need paint PPF, I truly do believe strongly in paint protection film, especially in northern states and climates like Canada, where stones and salty conditions are very prevalent. I think it's a great idea. All-weather floor mats are a great idea. I think some of those things, spray and box liners, are great ideas if you're using it as a work truck. But do those. There's a lot of these little independent, tertiary shops just down the road usually. See, the thing is, you might pay these guys. They'll say, well, here's a package. Here's a PPF. We'll give you for, $1,800. We'll cover the front 18-inch of your vehicle. They'll charge you $1,800. But if you neglected to do that, you take the keys, take possession, drive away, make a plan, and call that shop in advance and say, can you book me in on Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock? Boom, yes. They get you in. You'll probably get that same PPF. They're getting it done at that shop anyway, but they're putting their markup on it, you see. So what you're probably going to want to do is decline virtually all of that extras, get the base vehicle for what it is, plus tax, registration, just the bare minimum. Then you take it over there, and you're probably going to get that paint protection film on there for $600 instead of that $1,800 that they want to charge you. And that goes for all of these extras. Same thing with a tonneau cover or a spray and box liner or any of those factors. Always do them. Look, it's a little extra legwork. It's a couple of extra phone calls, but trust me, it's worth it. It's hundreds and sometimes thousands of dollars out of your pocket if you decide just for the convenience, because a lot of people like convenient. I get it. I'd also like to hear if you have any new tips that can help getting the best deal possible. Please do drop in the comment section below. It can help each and every one of the viewers when they're out looking for their next car as well. The fifth story, finally, with all of these high prices over the last 4 or 5 years, car dealerships are finally getting what they deserve. We're seeing sales start to slow. There's a 1.2% month-over-month increase in days supply. We're up to 96 days supply overall when you blended average the industry. Now, Stellantis, one of the leading manufacturers that have shown that customers are not ready to pay luxury car money for non-luxury car vehicles. And while they've incentivized a lot of their vehicles and they've really knocked down their days supply drastically from 150, 188 days supply down to vehicles in the range of 110, 120, 130 days supply, the fact remains is Stellantis is still about 15.9% year over year down from 2024 and about 12.8% down quarter over quarter. General Motors is another one. They went from 2019 down from almost 8 million units sold down to under 6 million here in 2024. And of course, naturally, the trend is going to be in consistent direction. Now, while they've had some increasing sales in some of their EV spots and some of their trucks,
The fact remains is a lot of their problems, like blown engines, we've seen recalls, the 780,000 L87 engines going up for recall, bad transmissions, lawsuits. General Motors is nothing short than having their hands full of dealing with recalls, catastrophic failures, and warranty claims. Some of these dealers have had some success at the wrap-up of 2024 with a lot of incentives. They've been pushing products and foregoing a lot of profits in the sake of just moving metal. But Ford, unfortunately, is one of those that haven't been able to move as much. Ford's been weighed down by as much as 63% of their current inventory are still 2024 model years. I've got a few general manager friends who have talked to me and said, look, Mark, we're having some struggles right now getting the metal moved. Of course, moving product. While a lot of vehicles are thinning out, we're starting to see more of this inventory sort of passing along, and a lot of customers are buying these vehicles. It's not without incentives, and a lot of general managers, depending on the specific brand, are suffering some struggles when it comes time to sell a lot of their products. We know car manufacturers like Nissan have really struggled. Now, they are selling vehicles, but the downside is their profits are minimal because, unfortunately, they're having to use their profits to pay for marketing and as well just to incentivize buyers because of the quality challenges, the CVT transmissions, and some of the other issues, as well as the lackluster product line means not too many people are interested in Nissan. So when you see their numbers down in terms of overall inventory on the lots, that doesn't mean a lot in that case because as an anomaly, we know Nissan is barely hanging on by a thread. They may only have 12 months left. And currently the new CEO at Nissan is now saying, openly admitted, the previous CEO, I don't know, but we are willing to talk to Honda after all. According to Cox Automotive, consumer spending has absolutely been trending upwards. The tail end of 2024 and then of course into 2025, rounding off March's numbers. They're seeing consecutive increases in spending, but let's not forget, this is more just an anomaly. From the way we look at how these numbers are derived, the end of the year before, generally the end of 2024, is a time that we find people stepping into the door of the dealership. There's usually incentives, there's usually a lot of promotions, and a lot of great deals. Great options to get the last model year, to get some extras thrown in. A lot of people are looking at getting last year's, of course, maybe for thousands of dollars, in some cases tens of thousands of dollars off, just because these manufacturers, and specifically the dealers in a lot of cases are more localized, are trying to unload some of their older inventory, getting ready for the next variations to roll in for 2025. Then as we hit the next year, this is the prime time. And while there has been steady increases in growth, not enough to indicate that there's any strength, not enough substantial sales to show that they're a strong indication of success. That's right, a lot of these manufacturers now are finding themselves in a world of hurt because now as of April 1st, we're talking about tariffs. Now I'm hearing people from all kinds of the corners of the spectrum. From Ford, we know that they pleaded, they said this will literally blow a hole in the industry. Ford is pleading not for these tariffs. General Motors also pleading hold off on the tariffs. Well, the way it hands, they actually had an extra month to sort of debate this. But it doesn't restrict begin and end with the General Motors and Ford. Stellantis, we know some of their products are also built in Canada and Mexico, some of which, of course, we talk about their smaller Compass, their Challengers, Chargers products, and of course their minivans. Mexico, same story. They have other products that are exclusive to the brand, but those are going to be hit very hard. But it doesn't end there. I've heard of even some of the premium Exoticcar manufacturers. I heard Ferrari. There was people that had ordered allocations for some of their cars, and the cars were on the boat. They were overseas. They were on their way transporting, and a lot of customers are starting to panic. Because now even a lot of the European brands, Germany says, no, we're not playing that way. We're not going to get rooked. So Germany's talking about reciprocating tariffs. We're talking about France. And a lot of these European brands are putting their backs up in anticipation of some of these tariffs that they're about to see from the European manufacturer or the European brands being imported into the United States. This doesn't just impact cars. It also impacts some of the parts that come. Now, the downside is, of course, even a brand like Ferrari, which I had heard, people were panicking. They had these $400,000-$500,000 cars that were in transport with the concern all of a sudden they could be facing a 25% tax increase through tariffs when their vehicle lands. Well, through a roundabout way, the conversation, it sounds like Ferrari has said in some situations, they may give you up to that date and may in fact negate that particular tariff for a period of time. Any more of the premium models, more exclusive, possibly V12 cars, they may in fact still apply. Whatever tariff will get passed through to the customer. This is going to hurt a lot of these brands. And while it's not just the Ferraris, and it's certainly not the General Motors and Ford and Stellantis, almost every brand is looking at that. We're also hearing Hyundai and Kia looking at setting up shop on North American soil. But till that time, these dealers are struggling because once these tariffs start hitting, once the rubber hits the road, that's exactly what we're going to see. Sales take a nosedive. It's not bad enough that we're seeing Stellantis continually year over year reduction in sales. Toyota also down in sales. A lot of that has to do with the buyer sentiment and the confidence in the brand. There's been tons of recalls, from bad transmissions in the 8-speed in the Tacoma to bad engines in the V6 with the Tundra. There's been no shortage of challenges, and Toyota has been front and center for some significant recalls. Now, another factor we have to consider are tax refunds. In the middle of tax season, this is when people start getting itchy and they want to spend their money. And these OEMs know full well that these customers are going to be looking at trying to capitalize. They're going to be looking at taking that money they get back from the government on their tax refunds, depending on the types of claims that they've had all year and what their tax results are for the year. Many people are actually seeing some increases. That's right, the average number of tax returns that are getting money back is up 1% since 2024. And the amount of money increase from 2024 is up around 6%. So a strong indication that there's more money in customers' hands. But of course, with interest rates being as high as they are, with new car loans being around 9.68% and used car loans being at about 14.72%, there's still a strong sensitivity to the cost of living crisis. A lot of people are still struggling with the very idea of keeping food in the mouth, roof over the head. No, what they don't need are these constant, ever increasing price escalations from a lot of these vendors and these manufacturers. And if there's one thing that we've learned in the last 4 years, is that a lot of these brands, and we've seen it, Stellantis being one of the worst for that, with their Jeeps going massively up in price, 6 figures for a lot of their vehicles. We're seeing Wagoneers for well over $120,000, $130,000. We're also seeing Grand Cherokees up touching for 6 figures in that $100,000 and above. And even Durangos I've showed you on the car lots up in that $70,000, $80,000 range. So it's a clear indication that Stellantis is still somewhat out of touch with their buyer, their core buyer. The buyer is the middle class that's just looking for an average vehicle with reasonable quality, reasonable reliability. But no, the cost of living crisis is holding people back. And as a result, the index of consumer sentiment has actually been declining over the course of the last few months. 0.1% in January, 1.7% in February, and 1.9% down in March. A lot of customers are just getting shy. Of course, with this instability, volatility in the market, these new products are wonderful, but not at the forsaken cost, of course, increases that a lot of customers are starting to see. But some clearer indication as to what's happening in the market. Sure, while pickup trucks seem to be an ever-growing popularity, whether you're talking about full-size trucks, Tundras, whether you're talking about Ford F-150s, Rams, a lot of inventory out there. Chevy and GM have their product lines as well. Now, of course, also included in this grouping are popular vehicles like the Maverick or some of the other Ford vehicles like the Ford Ranger. Means that a lot of those are actually helping bringing up the numbers, because in reality, a lot of the sales numbers are down even for trucks. But overall, the clear indication sales are dropping year over year. Mid-size cars are down about 17.4% year over year. Compact SUVs are down about 8.1%. Mid-size SUVs are down about 11.6%. A strong indication some of the most popular segments in the automotive industry are all down on sales year over year from 2024. And this is only going to get worse. This is as of March 2025. And as we roll into the rest of the year, a lot of these manufacturers are going to try to move some of their product, some of their manufacturing facilities out of Canada, some out of Mexico, and replant them on American soil. But none of this happens overnight. And likely all of this comes at a cost, with tariffs one way or the other, reciprocating tariffs without getting charged. Don't want to get into the politics of this. It doesn't matter. The bottom line is what does matter is the cost of living crisis and the fact that these vehicle prices continually climb. Could you imagine adding another 10%, 15, 20, 25% on the tag of any of those popular vehicles you've been looking at today? Well, guess what? As we roll into 25, we're likely to see more and more of that. In this unstable market right now, almost every manufacturer is finding ways to become competitive, try to maintain market share. Many of them are losing it, and many customers are deciding not to buy anything right now and hold off because the cost of living is constantly climbing, and it's making vehicles very unaffordable. So now what we're seeing is the average age of vehicles that were on the road 5 years ago was around 7 to 8 years of age. And now we're seeing that number creep up to 13 to 14 years of age, simply because more people are holding on to their older vehicles a lot longer, putting in those parts. But know this, sadly, even those people that are thrifty and good DIYers are likely going to be lacking some of the benefits of having an older vehicle when even these parts are going to be subjected to some of these tariffs. So it might be, a starter that you bought today for your Ford truck. You might have been able to buy it for $400. You know what? In 6 months, that might cost you $650 or $550. You're probably going to start seeing cost increases even on the parts that you're using in your older vehicles. So while it's always beneficial to fix what you've got, in most cases, if it's a reliable vehicle and it's not totally clapped out, a lot of people are just deciding to fix what they've got. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that's what I'm doing. My '03 Ram, I just keep it trucking. There will be a time where I'll need to buy a new vehicle, and trust me, I'll be shopping and reaping my own rewards. I'll be watching, I'll be looking for deals, and there's certainly places I'll be looking. But now, as we start to see, as we roll into 25, the OEMs are panicking. The dealers are panicking. Because when the OEMs have to pass those losses, the tariffs have to get passed down to these individual dealers. The dealers are ultimately going to see a less and a reduction in foot traffic, and we're seeing that already. I'm hearing from general managers in certain dealerships here locally where some have seen some success, and a lot of that was the end of 25. A lot of them aren't. I've even seen a lot of Corvettes showing up. Corvettes that you couldn't find 2 years ago. Now I've seen in a local dealership with 40 of them on their front lot. So it's a strong indication that popular vehicles aren't necessarily selling either. And even some of the cheaper, more cost-effective vehicles aren't selling. So there was a time when you thought, okay, well, the lowest cost vehicle always wins. That's not always the case. Things have been in the tank for Nissan, for the Versa. Things have been in the tank for the Mitsubishi. And of course, their little putt-putt car is also going on hiatus. Bye-bye. Because a lot of people aren't interested in that either. And we've already showed you the small and medium-sized crossovers and SUVs are drastically down on sales year over year. 10, 15% down. It's an indication that the most popular spaces and the segments are not selling. That's right, sales are on the decline, and every manufacturer is now having to find new ways to stay in business, to stay creative, to stay competitive. With a lot of these new taxation, strong competition, China knocking on the back door with BYD, there's all kinds of forces and headwinds against each and every manufacturer, many of which them will never survive. And with all of that said, the best, most reliable cars for 25 and the worst reliable cars for 2025. If you're looking for a good quality vehicle, you're definitely going to want to see what I have in store for you. Hope to see each and every one of you in the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.